Benvenuti and ciao ragazzi to the latest episode of From N to I, the podcast which gives you short blasts from SSC Napoli's past. My name is Henry Bell and I will be hosting today alongside my co-host Kirsten Schlewitz. Hello Kirsten, how are you today?
You know, I'm really upset right now that this is not a YouTube podcast because I feel like I'm doing a little Blair Witch and I wish y'all could see me because I have like this blue flare, a Napoli blue flare, if you will, in my new glasses that's shining off. I wish I could tie that into like that what we're going to be covering today, but I don't think this is like a haunting episode or individual.
If I was a right back playing in European football in the 1970s, I would think to myself, I'm so fucking scared right now if I saw Ruud Krol rampaging towards me. Yes, dear listeners, we are talking about, in my humble opinion, the greatest defender of all time, the Dutch sweeper and left back, Ruud Krol. How did that work as a segue, Kirsten?
That was very good.
Yeah. So Krol, again, is a figure that I'm sure people listening of all ages will have heard mentioned in reference to Napoli. Again, he slightly suffers from when he played for the club. There isn't that much footage of him playing for Napoli. But what we're going to do is that Kirsten's going to help me sort of fill in the historical context of what's going on. And then I'm basically just going to be very excited about him because I just absolutely love him as a player. He's the second most important player to the great total football Dutch side and Ajax side. And actually, when Cruyff didn't turn up to the World Cup in '78, I think he became the most important. Anyway, enough of all that. So yeah, I mean, you can't really say Ruud Krol without thinking about Ajax. And obviously, Napoli and Ajax are going to be involved with each other a bit over the coming few weeks. Kirsten, how did it all begin for him, and what's his sort of legacy in Amsterdam?
Well, I thought that this was really important to point out that his career with Ajax first, because when he came to Napoli and Napoli were in that kind of, well, all throughout the 60s and 70s, really, it was a bit of a roller coaster, but they were definitely on a decline. So it's essential that we understand just how great of a team that Krol was playing with at the time.
Yeah.
Because he started his career with Ajax in 1968 and he didn't, break into the first team for a couple of years, but still Ajax was and is the most successful club in the Netherlands. Currently, they have 36 Eredivisie titles. They're the seventh most successful club in Europe in the 20th century, and they've won the European Cup 24 times, which means that they are one of only 5 teams who are able to both keep the trophy and to wear a little badge that's like, ha, we are amazing. We have won this more than once, that sort of thing. So
they won it 4 times, right? Is it 4?
4 times. They won it 4 times. So, and during this, while Krol was there, they won it 3 times in a row, 1971, 1972, 1973. But I don't want this to diminish him at all, but the poor man wasn't involved with any of those finals.
You're playing the 73 final.
He at least was not involved in 2. According to my research. I know he was not involved in 1971 when they won for the first time because he broke his leg.
Yeah.
And I can fairly certainly say that he was not involved in 72, but in 73, that might have been back when they did the double.
Yeah, he was.
Two-legged finals. Was he involved in both legs?
He definitely played in. No, because there's only one leg for the final.
Are you sure?
Yeah, and he defo played because that was his year. Because you're right, absolutely 100% right. That he was quite young, and like 71, he was kind of in and around the team. And then he got injured. And the 72, I think he was still coming through. But then 73, he absolutely dominated the whole competition. And I don't think they did like a player of the competition back then, but he'd be a great shout to win it just because of his domination. But yeah, I mean,
so if we could do retroactive awards, we'd go back and
yeah, exactly. That was me rewinding time, everyone.
It is important to remember that at this time, this is the Ajax of Cruyff. It's under Michelis, and everything is, that golden age of
Neeskins, Johnny Rep. I mean, yeah, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful players. Please do watch some stuff on YouTube, everybody, or go to Footballia to see the whole games.
I mean,
it's beautiful.
Even in 74 or 71 is that's when Johan was being named the footballer of the year. So this is an incredible side that he started with, and they picked him up from the time that he was young and said, Krol, you are one of the absolute best. You are coming towards.
And it was a team also that redefined what football is, what football could be. We don't have Pep Guardiola without the Dutch team. They were famous for their pressing all around the pitch. So I always find it amusing when people talk about Jurgen Klopp inventing the gegenpress. That they were doing it in Holland in the late 60s, early 70s. But
the problem is that YouTube doesn't have that good of clips of it.
That's true. But for Footballia, I have, I think, almost all the European games in 70, 71, 71, 72, 72, 73. So it is worth it. And the other final thing that I think is important, particularly when we talk about Krol a bit later, and most people will know this, but some of you might not, is that this positional flexibility was really important to that great Ajax side, which was Michels. And then in the he was replaced by a Romanian whose name I always forget, but he was really important. Come on, Hennes.
Quick, hit pause. We'll look it
up. No, that's not how we roll. Come on, Henry. Kovacs, is it? Kovacs?
That sounds very Croatian.
Let me get this right. But what's important is that a lot of those players in that team, Stefan Kovac, I don't know how to pronounce that. And actually doesn't get enough love, actually, because he took over from Michels and actually still won a European Cup. But every player in that team could really play anywhere on the pitch. And when you watch the footage, it's incredible because you see Krol starts the game as a sweeper, but then will play as a left back that actually ends up playing as a kind of really, really attacking left-sided forward. And they sort of swap around. Cruyff, very hard to define where he played on the pitch. He was a striker, but then he would also drop massively deep. He would go back to right back. The defenders could swap anywhere. The midfielders swapped with the fullbacks. It was just a beautiful way of seeing the game. And Krol was absolutely at the center of that. But so that was the early bits of Ajax. And then Krol... Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to point out that we have played Ajax before, and that was before their incredible the 1970s run in what was known as the Intercities Fair Cup, which most people don't think about these days because it is not technically recognized as a European football competition. So, you wouldn't see it in our stats on European football or our trophies. Not that we won the trophy, but it was set up to promote international trade fairs. And so it was pretty much by invitation only, cities that were hosting trade fairs, and then by invitation, cities that finished kind of higher up. But when Napoli played, they had finished 7th, so they were kind of like, well, we guess we might invite you. We'll also invite Cagliari, Inter, Juventus, that
and we did so well in this game, didn't we?
Oh my God,
glorious game.
So well. It was Ajax's only time in the tournament. It was our only time in the tournament. We meet in the 3rd round and defeat them in Naples with Pier Paolo Manservisi, who sounds like he might be a butler, but scored the winning goal there. And then this is even better name, Sayak Swart.
Amazing.
Scored in the 35th minute of the reverse fixture and took the game to added extra time. And then within 6 minutes, Ruud Sorendonk scored a hat trick. So Ajax came away with a 4-1 victory over Napoli. And you'll notice Cruyff did not score in that game, but he scored 4 goals in 8 matches. So even though that they were knocked out in the semifinals by Arsenal, Ajax were already a little bit on their way to being this incredible team that ultimately developed Krol. And I think that's the important part for what we're going to talk about is
developed.
They created him.
Absolutely. And I think also it's also worth mentioning the Dutch national side, which got to the final of the 1974 World Cup and final 78 World Cup, playing at this kind of total football, which is a particular kind of 4-3-3. And Krol, again, central to all of these things. Now, a lot of the players across this Ajax team, a bit like these days when they got to the semis a couple of years back, they were basically picked apart by various European giants. So Cruyff, as a lot of you know, ends up going to Barcelona, but the other Nieskins and Rep and these sorts of players, they all end up going elsewhere. Apart from Ruud Krol, who stays at the club for the whole of the 1970s. And then in 1979, he decides to move on with his life. And
shall we remind people that in 1979 he actually was 3rd place for the Ballon d'Or, so it's not like he's slacking in the world of football.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And he was like, and even back then, defenders didn't often get nominated. I mean, you had Beckenbauer and stuff, but like, but he was the captain of the Dutch team of the 1978 World Cup, which is why he got that Ballon d'Or. So he decides it's time to move on from Ajax, and he obviously wants to go and play in Italy because that's the best place in the world. Like who wouldn't want to play in Italy, eh?
Who wouldn't want to eat in Italy?
Yeah, exactly. But it's all very complicated. Like foreign players playing in Italy back then was a bit of an issue. So lots of teams came in for him. Like I think Juve, Milan, a variety of clubs. But there was some complication with the registration of foreign players, and he ends up going to Vancouver. Things changed, and then Napoli club legend Antonio Giuliano says, "Come on, mate, come over to Napoli. It's great. We'll get you on loan. You can come and play for a few months."
So incredibly persuasive and charismatic. It's just ridiculous. Sorry, indeed. I just had to add that in. Not Krol. I mean, he could have been as well, but yeah.
And those of you listening don't know that Giuliano was captain for 12 seasons, absolute club legend. You can't, and he won the European Championships in 1968 with Italy. So he was really important as a player, but incredibly important as a director. Also very involved in the signing of Diego Maradona. So like me, I think Giuliano thought, well, we've got a chance to sign the best defender of all time, and so we got him in on loan, and then he ends up staying, and they had to do a bit of a deal with Vancouver, and who I think were justifiably quite pissed off that we kind of stole their player. And Krol plays for Napoli for 4 seasons between 1980 and 1984. And that's the kind of context to how we've got here now. And in his first year, he wins the league player of the year. Napoli finished 3rd in the league. We only concede 21 goals in 30 games, which is the 3rd best defensive record. And he plays brilliantly the next season when we finished 4th. Then a bit of a wobble the next season, we finished 7th. It was more to do with the attack back then. So in 82-83, we only conceded 29. We only scored 22 goals that season. So I don't think you'd really blame that on Ruud Krol. And then he gets this really serious knee injury. And then 83-84, he's not really the same player. And essentially he's sold to make way for the wages of a certain Diego Armando Maradona, which he sort of reflects on in quite a philosophical way, thinking, fair enough, mate. I mean, if I was going to, he loved the city, he wanted to stay, but he thought, if I'm going to go for anybody, I might as well go for Maradona. And for me, it's and not just me, but I think for a lot of people, it's such a shame that the best forward of all time never got to play alongside the best defender of all time for Napoli. They were like ships passing in the night.
I think you really need to read that quote that you've written down here, though, about his affection for Naples.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, Krol, as anyone knows, anyone of a certain age from Naples, just gets so much affection from the population. But it was a two-way street. So Krol, in an interview that he did with it's a good blog article that you can look up, actually. He says that this city really grabbed me by the throat and it never let me go. So this was an interview that he did, to when he was back at the club during the Sarri era, and he was heralded a hero. In fact, Sarri told him that you're a Napoli hero, you're a hero. So he wasn't just one of these, he wasn't just like a mercenary foreign player at the end of his career turning up for a last paycheck. Like, he really immersed himself in the culture and the feeling of the city. And the city, paid him back.
I was going to say, I think that that's really important to note, because you can be just reading about dry articles about Napoli history and come across his name on Wikipedia or whatever, and you won't see it reflected that he was actually passionate about this club and what he did while he was here, and that he loved the city and loved Napoli. So I think it's important to just pause for a moment and be like, yeah, he was not just somebody flitting in from Canada and then going back. Yeah. Didn't he go on to play like one more season somewhere?
He played for Cannes, I believe, for a couple of years, and nothing much happened. But yeah, I mean, like in 1980, there was a big, horrible earthquake that happened in Naples, and he went into the city to help out and stuff. So like, he's, absolutely hero. I think I just want to talk a little bit about him as a player. So he's only scored one goal for Napoli over 4 seasons. So again, it's hard to see footage, but you can see that goal on YouTube, and I think it sort of tells you everything that you need to know. I've seen a lot of his action for Ajax and Holland, mostly through the COVID lockdown, and there was no football on, so I was like, I'm just going to watch the best teams of all time. And but the goal he scored, his only goal against Brescia in his first season, and it does tell his story. Like, it's just so not what you'd expect from a defender. Like, he beats the guy at the edge of the box and then scores with like the outside of his right foot. It's like a super classy finish that you'd expect from a sort of number 10, not from a number 5. And he very much was a number 5, even though back then the number 5 went to the man marker and number 6 went to the sweeper, the libero. But he insisted on the number 5, which I think is quite cool as well. But yeah, I mean,
well, I think it might go back to the whole Ajax total football thing as well. Like, numbers don't define me. I will play wherever it is I want to play, and I will do it well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is him in a nutshell. And I think when he was playing for Napoli, he's pretty much, I mean, his career stats according to Transfermarkt, he's 240 games as a left back and 160 as a sweeper, in terms of where he started on the pitch. And I think that does sum him up as a player, in that he kind of mastered 2 positions. He was the best. He won Player of the Year playing as a sweeper in Italy in 1980-81, which was a really good period for that position. He was part of the greatest, he was the left back really in the greatest team of all time. How many players can you say have mastered? I mean, him and Maldini really go toe to toe, because you could say that Maldini's best performance for Italy came at centre back during Euro 2000, and obviously he was a wonderful left back as well. Anyway, that debate's for another podcast. But really, for Napoli, he was playing as this kind of quarterback figure, at the back, and the footage that you can see is wonderful, and it really matches some of the way that he used to play, but just because he's a bit older, he doesn't quite have the legs for it, and he'd bring the ball out from the back, or he'd do these incredible sort of 40 or 50 yard passes that would be absolutely precise. And a lot of people also talk about his tactical influence, that he would be really, obviously with his upbringing, his training, really help the players understand the kind of flexibility of football. So I think it was a real treat for Napoli fans to see someone, and please do, even if you watch 2 minutes of him play on YouTube, someone who's just so gifted. Just, it's, we saw it obviously with Maradona, but talent-wise, they're not a million miles away. In some ways, Krol was kind of the Maradona of the defenders, if that makes sense. The way that and if you want to watch a great match of his, maybe head back to the 1973 European Cup campaign for Ajax, and you see his performance against Real Madrid, where he scores a free kick from outside the box, which is amazing, or his performance against Bayern. They beat Bayern Munich 4-0, and it was a great Bayern team that had Gerd Müller in it and Franz Beckenbauer. You see someone playing the game a bit like Maradona, in the sense that it's like, okay, there's just rules about how to play, and I'm not going to listen to those rules. I'm going to play it my way. And there's just, the ball sticks to his feet in such an amazing way. And he's playing as a sweeper and as a left back. Anyway, so I think that and as we've said on the show before, Napoli have been, in the 60s and 70s, a bit of an up and down club. And I think those first couple of seasons, the opportunity for everyone at the San Paolo just to see this genius work his magic, who really cared about the city, must have just been incredible. Again, born into the wrong era, aren't I?
You definitely were. You were born at least a decade too late to really appreciate everything.
And I think
next time.
Hey, next time, yeah. If we believe in that stuff, why not? Let's hedge our bets. But the last thing about him is that in the last season, Napoli nearly got relegated. I think they finished 2 spots above it. That was the Napoli that Maradona arrived into. But I think the fact that Krol's knee injury had basically stopped him being that really top flight player. That's the reason I think Napoli just sunk, because they were very, very reliant on his, not just his footballing talent, but his tactical brain on the pitch. And yeah, that tells its own story, I think. So like
that answered the question that I wanted to ask you about his contribution. But what do you think? You mentioned all that, or do you need another hour to go on for Krol?
I mean, I could talk. The other thing, there's a really good picture of him.
Yeah, see.
Have you seen the one when he's like chest out, Napoli shirt, and it's the one with the donkeys on? And he also looks smoking hot. He's got his
I want that kit so badly, or a poster of him doing that.
And he looks like a leader, but he also looks like a rock star. And like, it's so like those Dutch players of the 70s were like that. They were non-conformists. They did what they wanted. Such a good fit for Naples. So anyway, my last thought is just look him up, whether he's playing for Ajax or he's playing for Napoli. It will fill your heart with joy.
Unless this podcast is released after we play Ajax and, Napoli fail in some way, then we might be a little sad if you watch him playing for Ajax. And yeah,
that's true. But let's not worry about that. Well, let's worry about that a bit, hopefully. But yeah, anyway. Well, Kirsten, I think, should we wrap this up now? Unless there's anything else you want to say about Krol?
Nothing except echoing Henry with the whole look up that picture, because you'll want to put it on your wall as well.
Well, yeah, make it your backdrop on your phone. And does he feature in your book at all, Krol?
Not enough, because again, like our previous podcast with Kane, just not a lot out there for watching him, or even outside of his Ajax days, to put into the right context for Napoli. So he's there, but at the same time, these years were kind of, again, up and down, so they don't get covered a whole lot, unfortunately.
Yeah,
the book could have been twice as long if
I don't know how you even managed to fit it. I mean, God knows. But yeah, I think we're due another English language interview with Krol to talk about Napoli. So there's this one blog site, which is worth a look, actually. But that was done like 5 years ago. So I think it'd be great to somebody, maybe we can sit down and say, tell us about Napoli one day. I don't think
Krol, come on our podcast. Come on.
Rudy. Come on, Rudy. All right. Well, thank you very much for listening. If you want to find where we exist on the internet, head to @FarFromVesuvius. This is one of 3 podcasts that come out of that network. We also have Ken Freddy's Coffee with Ken on Twitch on a Saturday morning. Please do go and join Ken for those. So thank you for listening to From N to I, and Forza Napoli.
Sempre!